Welcome to the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners Policy Sessions for February 23rd, 2023. Gary, what is the first item?
Thank you, Chair Smith. So our first item today is proposed board order, proposed board rules. Proposed board processes, procedures, and protocols. Sorry about that. We've switched the agenda for those following online due to commissioner schedules. So we're going to do proposed board rules first. Stephen Madcord, County Counsel, will present. Stephen, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, commissioners. This is a revisit of topics that we have discussed previously, most recently being on January 12th. And what I have circulated to you for your review and consideration, and I hope you've had an opportunity to do both, is a two-part document. The second part is basically the board processes that we have discussed in the past, and that is Exhibit 1. But the new addition is a board order that I drafted that, if passed by the board and approved by this board, would adopt the PPPs for the board moving forward. And what the board order does, it basically defines and encapsulates the Board of County Commissioners' role in policy setting, in quasi-judicial, and a legislative capacity for the county. It identifies the board's source of authority, which is ORS Chapter 203, as well as County Code 2.11. It identifies your two direct reports, the county administrator and the county council. It also incorporates your spirit, service, professionalism, integrity, respect, individual accountability, and trust, and also sets forth a model of governance on strategic leadership, clear distinction of board and county administrative roles, collective rather than individual decision-making, and proactivity rather than reactionary. It further identifies and incorporates your performance Clackamas goals of honoring, utilizing, and promoting natural resources, growing a vibrant economy, ensuring safe, healthy, and secure communities, building a strong infrastructure, and building public trust through good government. And it identifies other protocols that are meant to and intended to promote open, transparent, deliberative decision-making processes. And so all that information is included in the proposed board order that, if approved by this board, would, in conjunction with the board processes, would be a document that would guide this board, which would guide all future incoming county commissioners. And like I said in the staff report, as well as over our conversations, it aids staff in aiding you. So what it does, it identifies how to notice things, when to notice things, how the board operates, how the board functions, how the board keeps minutes, how the board votes, how the board determines a quorum. And that would aid everybody in Gary's office on the fourth floor, all of your policy coordinators, as well as other departments in when does the board meet? Where does it go for executive session? How do I get on executive session? So it's a helpful in that regard. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to make it, and the narrative speaks to it as well, is that it is intended, these are not intended to be strict and rigid and in any way limit your authority or autonomy or flexibility in business operations. It's not intended to do that. It is intended to be guideposts, not just for you, but like I said, for board staff and for county staff in general. For example, when Commissioner Scholl came on board, the first thing I would have done, I went up and I gave him a tour of our office. I would have handed to him this document and saying, here's the framework of sorts. Here's your role. Here's the source of your authority. Here's what you as a commissioner do. You do quasi-judicial, you do legislative, you do policy. You don't do internal operations. You have me, you have Gary, and then you have the outside world, your constituents. And also, here's your processes here. And so it takes us to Exhibit 1, which is a document, it's 6 pages long, and it is a document that deals with the organization, minutes, special meetings, notices, agendas. None of this is novel. None of this is different than what we're doing presently. It just memorializes it. It just documents it. It talks about public testimony. It talks about how we adopt ordinances. Again, nothing novel. It's set forth in statute. It's set forth in current board process and practice. It talks about application of these processes. Who does it apply to? It applies to this board in all its governing functions. It would be WES, CCSD number 1, NCPRD, Tri-City, Enhanced Law Enforcement District, all those entities for which you serve as the governing body. This would be systematic, consistent, conformist with all of those operations. So you wouldn't deviate in any respect in your governing capacity on any of those other areas. I direct your attention to section 11, which is page 5 of board process, procedures, and protocols. And that is board messaging. And that's an area of which you would probably have some interest in. Like, how does an individual commissioner message something? Let's say Commissioner Savis is keen on further deliberations and conversations on tolling. And let's say Commissioner Scholl is absolutely against tolling. How do they as individuals get to message that? Not as the board itself, but as individual members. And this sets forth how that process could unfold and could present itself. And I know that the board, you're not alone. Other boards have struggled with it as well. How do we get the county's message out on a short time period? Or are we going to wordsmith this particular document? How does that all present itself and materialize? So you'll want to take a look at that and see if that language meets with your level of satisfaction. It's basically, I think it reflects the discussions that the board has had in the past, but I do know that it's kind of an ever-changing philosophy of sorts. But for example, it says the chair can sign a letter if a quorum of the board approves of the letter, even if the chair was opposed, because the chair has certain responsibilities and obligations as the chair. If the board approves an ordinance or an order that the chair said no to, somebody still needs to sign that. And so that's a responsibility that's incumbent on the chair to make sure that the county's business continues to be done, that their messaging continues to be delivered. So that's what it says in that particular. The chair may delegate to the vice chair in that regard as well. But what it says is that the process still completes itself. It still continues. There's also, it says the chair may provide testimony or sign a letter on behalf of the board without prior board approval if the testimony or letter repeats an already adopted position of the board, or if it is merely ministerial function of the board. Ministerial meaning, yes, we support granting a license to this particular entity. Well, you don't have rejection authority, but they look for your advice and consent on that, something along those lines. Or if it's a position that you've already clearly identified with, such as we are going to open up warming shelters this weekend. The board, the chair could write a letter saying, dear cities, please use your whatever efforts you can to offer warm shelter for those who are houseless over the course of this cold spell. It allows for that type of flexibility and being responsive and nimble without having to achieve a quorum and have a bunch of either telephone calls or special meetings to achieve that particular objective. So I would encourage the board to take a look at that. And again, this is a draft. It's not meant to be, I mean, if you gave the thumbs up today, it would be perfectly fine. If you wanted to include additional information in there or material in there, you could certainly do that as well. And I know that there have been other thoughts, but I wasn't going to include a lot in here unless it had at least 3 commissioners saying, yes, I like that point. I like that approach. I like that tact. and we can incorporate that in there, but it makes it difficult to be the scrivener if I'm doing it for individual commissioners when I don't see support of at least two others. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think what you have in front of you is a good template moving forward for, like I said, board function and for staff function. I don't see a lot or any pitfalls associated with adopting this. And if the board wanted to make it more specific or more granular with any internal operations, if a consensus of you agreed to it, a quorum, I'd be happy to incorporate that language in there as well.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, for that. I have read over both your whereases and your Exhibit 1, your PPPs. How cute is that? Right. So, and I have some points of questions. I might have some edits, but commissioners, I'm going to ask that this passes by a 5-0 unanimous vote. We cannot have one or two dissenting votes and think that we're all going to agree to this and we're all going to abide by board rules, because it will not work. And so I have some questions here. I have some additions, Stephen, and I don't know where they go, but the additions that I have are points of clarification of some issues that have come up. And with that in mind, I see two hands up, but I am just going to go ahead and go through some of these. I'm going to save my whereases. I'm going to start with the exhibit. It says organization under Exhibit 1, page 1 on your PPPs. Number E, it says the chair will designate a time limit for public comment and communication. And that is usually done, as we know, in interest of time. Also, sometimes we might have to limit commissioners' allotted time to talk in the interest of time, because we have a lot of meetings scheduled back to back. Is there an opportunity for me to limit, as I conduct the meetings, I say, commissioners, please be brief. Normally we do that. We understand to do that. But there's times when, it goes longer. And I just have to be able to say that. And my board has to be able to understand that we need to move this along in interest of time, because we have the public waiting, we have staff waiting. And a lot of times our policy sessions or issues really shouldn't be a platform for pontificating necessarily any lengthy oratory. I think commissioners need to be brief in what we want done. So Stephen, under E, it says a possible designated time for commissioners in interest of schedule and time of scheduling and time. Is that the place for it?
Absolutely. It could say the chair can or will designate a time limit for any comment or communication.
Okay, why don't we just do that? And you know what, commissioners, I've always allowed you to talk. That's not an issue, but we could be running up on some time. Turning over to page 2, number 5, it says when it is in the public interest, the board by majority of vote at any meeting may adjourn to another time. I think the chair needs to reserve the authority to adjourn the meetings, as I have in the past, where I felt that there were impending threats or acts of whatever you want to call them, when some of my commissioners may be viewing from a remote location and not fully understand or be able to read the room. I think the chair any chair needs to be able to have the authority to do that for those reasons. Not because, gee, I don't want to discuss this anymore, but I think you understand what I'm saying. We've had 3 board meetings where that needed to be done. The first one I did not adjourn. I limited time to 1 minute and I ran a very strict board meeting. The second meeting I had to adjourn abruptly. And then about the third meeting on January 13th. And I think the chair needs to reserve the right to be able to do that as well. Is that okay? And is that, Stephen, does that go under 5? How would you rewrite that?
Good question, Chair. So technically, there's supposed to be like a motion to adjourn as well. So the chair has authority to preside over a meeting, but let's say 4 of your colleagues say, we want to continue this meeting. You could suspend it, but if the 4 alternatives wanted to stay and conduct business in your absence, they could do that. But you certainly have, plenary authority to preside over the meeting, and whether that means calling it and recessing, that's well within your authority, but it can be overruled by 3 others.
Then what is the purpose of the chair conducting the meetings?
You call the agenda and you preside. It doesn't.
I preside, and what are my duties of presiding? See, that's what I have issue with, Stephen. There has to be a leader in the room who makes a split second decision. There's been 3 instances where I had to do that. I should be able to have the authority to do that. That can be put in the BCC rules. Any chair. The chairs that come after me. There's going to be a lot of chairs that come after me.
So, Stephen, I'm wondering if there could be, because Chair Smith is right, in the case of an emergency, she needs to be able to do that for the safety and welfare of everyone involved. So there could be some qualification to that. And honestly, I can't imagine any commission ever challenging that emergency. And if the whole commission wanted to go back instead of the chair, they could, I'm guessing, call another meeting, right?
Well, we would continue that meeting.
Yeah.
Just let things, like for instance, commissioners, I have my county cell phone, right? If there's a situation, I will get a text message, and maybe you folks won't. I am just the receiver of the text message. I'm not responsible to sending that to my other commissioners because frankly, I don't have time. I'm processing, I'm gauging, I'm trying to judge, I'm listening. So all of these factors that go into a meeting are sometimes difficult. So Stephen, we need to be able to allow for that. Maybe you can think about it and bring back some language that would assist the entire board in going through that.
Certainly.
Let's see. Oh, okay. On page 5, board messaging. And so I think we need to state for the public as well on voting. So a quorum is 3 because we have 5 members, but a vote passage is also 3. If we only have 3 commissioners show up and the vote is 2-1, that fails. So that needs to be made clear. And I don't know where in these rules that needs to go. We need to say on the 5-member commission, in order to hold business, a quorum constitutes the attendance of 3 members. However, in order to pass, what do you want to call it? It's not legislation, but in order to pass policy, we also have to have 3 votes, regardless of the amount of people who are in attendance. If there's 4 people in attendance, we have to have 3 votes for passage. If there's 5 people in attendance, 3 votes for passage. If there's only 3 members in attendance, we need 3 votes for passage. We cannot conduct business if we go below 3 members present. So I think that's just good for the public to understand that, because it came up on the Oak Lodge Water Authority. People were texting me, well, what happened? There was a 2-1 vote. Didn't it pass? Well, and maybe I didn't make it clear. I just assumed that, but then I did say we would bring it up next week right away. So anything that didn't pass last week was going to be brought up the next week for the full board to consider, which I'm okay doing that, but maybe a point of clarification. And Stephen, I don't know where that would go.
Well, your quorum requirement is under section 6 right now, where it says a quorum consists of 3 commissioners. And give me 1 second here. I recall that under 211 of our code, It
Yeah,
already,
but nobody's gonna go back and read the code. That's why it needs to be stated here.
okay,
Because if we're doing this for clarity, for people to want to know what are the board rules, I think it's good business. That's all I'm gonna say for now, because I want the other commissioners to weigh on this. I do have some other things to talk about, but I want all my commissioners to comment. And Commissioner Savas, you're up.
if I may, real quick, Chair, just
Yeah.
section 2.11060 of the county code.
Yes,
The attendance of 3 members of the Board of County Commissioners shall be necessary to transact business. A vote of approval of at least 3 commissioners is necessary for the board to take any action. We can
Okay.
certainly duplicate that language in these
yeah,
rules.
just take it out of there and reinsert it someplace in here, wherever you think is the best. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, we're 23 minutes into a 30-minute session. I'm not sure I can have much time to actually cover the topics here and share
Paul, go
that.
ahead. Paul, go ahead and
I think
take.
you're interrupting, Chair.
I
and
know,
that's
I'm saying you can go ahead and take as much time as you want on this. I'm trying to be accommodating to your needs. Go ahead.
My concern is that a lot of what we have discussed over the last year for board rules is stripped out of what's in this document.
Anything else?
I think the reference to Robert's Rules of Orders is pretty passive, where it says may resort to Robert's Rules. I really think, frankly, Chair, that we need more time on this. How a meeting is ran and how people are treated respectfully to one another on the board is terribly important. I don't think I've been interrupted more in the last 12 months, 14 months in my entire career serving on board.
Well, Paul, why don't you put your concerns in writing or bring those forward of the concerns that you've already put in writing for board consideration?
Chair, they're already expressed in that plastic laminated card I usually hold up, but I don't have one here at my desk. But the board rules, I really thought that some of those things are how we treat each other and how we respect each other is already in writing, and that's what was incorporated. A lot of what we worked on is stripped out of this work. Why? How did that happen?
I don't know. I didn't write this. Stephen Madcore, I did not present this. I'm just reacting to what I see here as well. Maybe Stephen can answer your question.
Well, one more thing before I get cut off, and that is that
Who's going to cut you off?
I also asked for language about some rules or language around censorship, and that's not even there as well. And I would like to ask Mr. Madcore one question, if I may, and that is this: if a commissioner is not allowed the opportunity to share his thoughts or her thoughts, and that person's cut off, is that tantamount to censorship?
You know, open, candid, free-speaking dialogue is always encouraged within time parameters. But one of your components to these rules that you have here, which I didn't incorporate all of them, but some of them do say, communicate with efficiency, allowing others to express their perspective, summarizing and underscoring decision points. Don't dominate the conversation. So, I mean, if you guys want me to include all of those things, I can do it, but it muddies the water to a certain extent because these are a little bit more, I don't want to say entirely, aspirational, behavioral, but they kind of are. But I mean, again, if the majority wants me to include, I included the spirit component, I included your performance clackamus component, the hard stuff, but in terms of this fluffier stuff, like the behavioral, be honest, respectful, and fair to each other, those are kind of self-regulating. I don't think I need to put those in board process and protocols, but if that's the direction of the board, I certainly can do it. But again, you're going to have to self-regulate in that regard.
Okay, well,
Go ahead, Paul.
thank you for the response, Mr. Madcore. My challenge, for example, yesterday is that if one doesn't know, if there's not actually a scheduled time, a 30-minute for a particular topic, it's hard for probably myself and even the chair to know how much time to give or allow anyone on a complex matter to even speak. So really, if the chair sets the agenda, but the agenda does not include a time period for that particular topic, then how is the chair or a member of the board allowed or to understand how much time it takes or how much time is allowed? And at least I would think that if someone is, if the chair feels that the meeting is, or the conversation is going on a little bit long, I think a quiet, or not a quiet, but a respectful response, like, can you limit your comments to 1 minute, Commissioner Savas, would be a courteous thing to do. That would fall under the current rules that are laminated. They're being respectful, but that's not what happens. I'll conclude my comments there. I can't support it as is.
Commissioner Scholl, your hand is up.
Yes, Councilor Madcore, I want to thank you for your work on this. I think you did an outstanding job. I agree with the comments that were made by Chair Smith on section 1E. I believe that 3 commissioners still need to be able to overrule the chair on continuing a meeting or ending a meeting, with the exception of a true bona fide emergency. This document, as it's written, does the spirit of it is one that I believe is going to bring us together, enable us to work better, enable staff to understand what's going on and how things should operate. And also for any new commissioner, it's going to be a very valuable tool. And we cannot make this into a micromanagement tool. This, Councilor Madcore has written this as a general guide to the conduct of our meetings, procedures, and protocols. And I don't think we should pencil whip this to death. Again, this is very good. And Councilor Madcore, thank you again for your work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Chair, I have my hand up. I just had a procedural
Thank you,
question.
Martha. Martha, I don't know why your hand raising feature doesn't work. It works for all the other commissioners. It doesn't work for you. So maybe somebody can help you with that.
Yeah, I think it's probably because I'm using an iPad. I don't know if that makes a difference, but I'll find out through IT. I just have a point of clarification. So if we have 4 commissioners present and it's a 3-1 vote, it passes. If it's a 2-2 tie, no, okay, you're going no. So
Yes.
Tell me.
You need 3. You need 3 to move anything forward or to stop anything. You need 3.
Okay.
Not 3 out of 5. 2-2 doesn't do it. Unless, of course, well, no, 2-2 doesn't do it.
No, 2-2, but if you had a 3-1, it would pass.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. That's what I thought, just a point of clarification.
And Martha, an additional point of clarification. If 3 commissioners are present,
And it's
3 commissioners, we need 3 votes. A 2-1 doesn't do it.
I know it. That's what I'm trying to understand. That the key thing is that we should really make sure that we have 4 commissioners at every business meeting, preferably 5, obviously.
Unless the topic is controversial, unless, we all agree and we can pass it. And maybe,
Right.
Maybe, staff and I should have looked at that list more carefully last week, but it was timely. It needed to be done. And I just, said, okay, let's just run it and see what happens.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Fisher, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. So first of all, I just want to say, I know we're talking about boards off into the future, but I really appreciate, Chair Smith, you are having to herd a bunch of cats on many of our meetings. And I applaud your ability to do that and am very thankful in many moments that I don't express to you how thankful I am. for your ability and skill in that. And even on Zoom, you've been doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
Really hurting us. It's
I
not
appreciate
easy.
that.
So some questions that I had. I want to make sure I know that in the code, if two commissioners want to call a meeting, they can do that. It's not listed in these board rules, and so I'm not sure if it should be or just to clarify.
I thought it was, Sonia. I thought it was, wasn't it, Stephen? I thought I read that.
No, I didn't duplicate the code in here. I just referenced it, but it does say two or more in the code, 2.11070, two or more commissioners may place any item on the agenda of a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners over the objection of the chair. If you would like me to duplicate that in here, I could certainly do that. It would not be problematic.
Well, I
So
think
you said call a meeting. You said you wanted to call a meeting, not put something on the agenda.
yeah, like if two commissioners felt like something was so important, there was an emergency, they wanted to call a meeting. I believe two commissioners can do that right now. And
I would agree with that interpretation.
yeah, so I just think that should be in there somewhere. So that was my first thought. That's number one. Number 8C is, I like that a lot. So I just wanted to call that out. I think it is well written, and I think it's really important that the chair has that authority. And it goes to what Chair Smith was saying about reading the room as well. I think that's a great addition, and I just wanted to say that I like that. 11A, I have a concern about, just part of it. This is about after a quorum of the board has reached a final decision on any matter before the board, each commissioner shall support and respect the decision of the board. Any commissioner may express their position or basis for opposing a position taken by a quorum of the commission. And then the next part where it says, but should not actively attempt to undermine a decision of the board. That could be interpreted a lot of different ways. And so I'm not sure what the right answer is, but maybe something that says should make best efforts to state the position of the board if expressing their alternate view. There will be times when some commissioners have a other perspective. I think of Commissioner Savas actually on this, because I remember when I was a new commissioner and he would talk, well, the jaws of death. And I'm going, oh my gosh, what is he talking about? The jaws of death. He kept talking about the jaws of death. And eventually all the rest of us caught up with Commissioner Savas and said, oh, we really have to, this is not good. We are having more expenses than we are having revenues. And if Commissioner Savas was at all stifled in his communication on that issue, that would be a disservice to Clackamas County. Sometimes commissioners see things that the rest of us need to catch up with, and we need to be able to continue to express those views.
So on 11A, the last, but should not actively attempt to undermine. I think maybe the term undermine is not appropriate. I think a commissioner can express their point of view and or explanation.
Yeah, we just get rid of the last part.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Our own philosophy. We all have our own philosophies.
Yep. Question on, it talked about who can sign stuff, and darn it, I didn't write it down, which part that was. But what happens, so if the chair doesn't want to sign something and the vice chair doesn't want to sign something and the three commissioners support something, then what? Like
Gary signs it. Do you remember
Yeah,
Webster Road?
Yep, I do.
He said this was a turkey. There's no way I'm going to put my signature on that document. And Gary graciously said, I can sign that. And that's the only time that I did not want to sign anything. It was from the previous commission. I'm not going to go over all the details, but I could not sign that document in good faith.
Yeah, no, and I get that. And I think that you should have that prerogative. And I also think that the vice chair agreed with you, but three commissioners didn't, that the vice chair should also have that prerogative.
I
So-
would agree.
Just as long as that's all clear, I don't know if we need to state that, but it might be good just to make that clear in this document, because I think Chair Smith is right. People are not going to go searching in the code. They're gonna, if they're a new commissioner, they're gonna look at this document. Okay, the chair may, oh darn it, I don't know what my note is on this. I'm gonna have to go back to this and look at it. And I will before the end of our discussion. I had some thought about section 1E. The chair may will designate a time for all public. I don't know what I was thinking. Sorry. I agree with
That is the 3 minutes testimony, and sometimes I have to shorten it if there is a lot of people in the room.
Oh, right. So I think that that's usually really great and we need to do that. But sometimes if we are in a situation, I just think we had a whole lot of hurt over one forum that we had. It wasn't even a public meeting, but I think 3 commissioners could have been there, where it was the map it thing where testimony was limited. What was allowed for the business community at 5 minutes and then shut down for like 1 minute for the community members. That created political havoc. So if 2 or 3 commissioners could overrule that, I think we need that balance just in case.
What
we
might be
really
an easier,
want more
Sonia,
input.
what might be an easier approach to that one? I did not chair that meeting you're talking about. I believe that was Commissioner Savas who chaired that meeting. If the beginning of the meeting, you state your intentions and you have a consistency throughout, and then people know what to expect. It's all about meeting people's expectations and fairness for the public listening in. So if there was a situation that came up and was that a Zoom meeting? Was Dylan helping with that? Staff made a recommendation. I wasn't there. Staff made a recommendation that we do this, and then differences were taken in. And it's difficult. I will say it's very difficult on the fly to make these determinations and these decisions. But I think if somehow, Stephen, for what Commissioner Fisher is saying, is if we can establish the consistency at the beginning of each meeting based on what is the perceived attendance and allotted time to do so. I also think regarding commissioners' communications on issues and policies, the conversations need to be germane to the topic. And what Commissioner Savas has accused me of this morning of what happened yesterday, his comments were not germane to the topic of the trolley trail and applying for a grant. And he has said that over and over and over to this board and to the public. I was not limiting new talk. I was not limiting a new opinion, but I do think our comments need to be germane to the topic that is efficient, that is something that stands the test of time in all public bodies. So that's something that I will try to adhere to. Thank you. Commissioner Fisher, do you have anything else?
My only other thought is that I want to know, I think you're right, Chair Smith, we should vote. We should do this 5-0. If we can't do this 5-0, we shouldn't proceed. And I do not, for one. Okay, so Stephen, where are you? There you are. I agree with Stephen. I don't want all the fluffy stuff in this document. I want this to be useful for commissioners in the future and for staff, and all the fluffy stuff is great. And we can look at that in our retreats. We can revise it. We can work on it. Those are ours for this board in this moment in time. I do not want fluffy stuff in our board in this document. So do we quit, or does Commissioner Savas do we want to do another time for him to list out specifically here what he would like included in this? Or what do we do? Because I don't want to spend more public time on something that we're not going to reach consensus on.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Fisher on this. We have 2 more commissioners with their hands up. Anything else, Commissioner Fisher? You're done? Okay, we can come back. Commissioner Savas, your hand is up, as well as Mark Scholl. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, well, just to respond to Commissioner Fisher's thing about that town hall meeting, I don't want to pick on staff, but staff recommended one thing for that particular town hall was not a meeting. The business community were invited as panelists. They were the panelist. public comment came afterwards. So I followed staff's advice. They ran the meeting. I thought that the presentation of Zoom meetings is unfortunate because sometimes the public cannot distinguish the guest or the panelist from the audience. And I think that was the confusion. So everyone got their opportunity to speak on public comment. They got more opportunity to speak on public comment. And so that was more confusion than it was anything else. And I did not chair that meeting. With regard to, where we are today, again, we spent a lot of time. We were supposed to compile, all of our recommendations. This does not reflect that. So what we have here today is something completely different and does not appear anywhere near close to any of the renditions that you all asked us to work on individually. What Chair Smith submitted for her recommendations was more aligned with mine than what we have here today. So what we have here today is something completely different. I don't know how it changed. And if we can't even meet the basic tenets of having direct board Robert's Rules of Order or Sturgis, if you can't even have a direct relationship, how can we run a meeting? It's passive. The basic rules of running a meeting should be at least incorporated. That's the very bare bones of public meetings. That concludes my comments.
Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, for those of you who expect this document to get a 5-0 vote, is like saying you don't want it to be adopted. This document, the way Councilor Madco has provided it, is as close as you're going to get to a 5-0 vote. We can't pencil whip this to death and expect it's going to go someplace in 5 different directions and end up in a 5-0 vote.
I am pretty satisfied with the document with a few minor points of clarification that I think will run into bumps along the way. I want to thank you for that, Commissioner Scholl. I'd be willing to vote for it today. Commissioner Fisher had a minor amendment. I had a couple of minor amendments. I don't think we need to add all that fluff because it's going to water down the document. I think it's less effective. I think the more direct and succinct you are and clear, the better it is. Any more comments from commissioners or staff on this today? Well, Gary, it doesn't appear that we have a 5-0 vote. So therefore, these board rule, Commissioner Fisher?
So I think that Commissioner Scholl convinced me that we should move forward. So I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt this document with the suggested changes that we discussed and for final approval after they're made, and we can look at it one more time. But I would move that we adopt this in spirit and hope we can have a second so at least we can.
I'll second that. I'll second it.
A motion has been made by Commissioner Fisher for adoptions of the board rules, seconded by Commissioner Scholl. I have a point of clarification, Commissioner Fisher, in your original motion. You said with changes. What changes would that be? Or do we just adopt the document without changes as presented today? And what we discussed is for the record, and we go with the spirit and intent of the document going forward. And I believe, Stephen, is the spirit and intent are recognized in law as well as anything else. Am I right on that?
It is, but it's not as binding and persuasive as the actual final document itself. I know what changes you want. I believe you want some cross-reference and inclusion of the language from 211. You also want a few modifications. How about you let me finalize this when I delete some sections about section 11A. I appreciate the board's support moving forward with this. Let me clean it up. Let me do some outreach with Commissioner Savas a bit more as well. But I assure you, I'll come back with the document that incorporates your changes, your proposed changes, and we'll get this over the finish line.
Okay, that's fine and dandy, but we have a motion that needs to be either voted on or withdrawn, and I'm ready to take a vote. If
Okay, I'll
that's
go ahead and withdraw my motion based on Stephen's recommendation. I do just want us to move forward and be efficient with our time.
Thank
okay. Mark, that's okay with you as a second?
Outstanding idea. Thank you, Sonia.
Okay, all righty.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah, Stephen, you're clear, and Gary, are you clear? You guys are saying yes. Okay.
Yes.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Gary, thank you very much. Shall we move on?
All right, thank you, Stephen. The next and final policy session today is 5-year transportation capital improvement program for fiscal years 2021 to 2025. Shannon, please bring in Mike Besner and Karen Burig, who will present. So one moment, please. All right, Mike is the Assistant Director of Transportation and Development. Karen Burig is a long-range planning manager in transportation and development. You still get your full 30 minutes. Go ahead, Mike and Karen.
Okay, thanks, Chair Smith, Administrator Schmidt, and Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to present the 5-year capital improvement plan to you. It's something that we're always proud of. It's all the good work we're doing for everybody in Clackamas County out on the transportation system. The 5-year CIP is different than the 20-year TSP, where these are a list of projects that are funded and they're happening. It's not a wish list. So Karen's going to step us through it, and I'm going to pass it over to her.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's nice to be here with you today. And today we are specifically looking for direction to place the fiscal year 2021-25 5-year CIP on a Board of County Commissioner board meeting under the consent agenda for approval. So that's the action that we're looking at the end of today. And I have prepared a very short presentation to provide you with an overview of the 5-year CIP. And the 5-year CIP, which I'll refer to with the fiscal year 21-25, was included as an attachment to your materials. So I will go ahead and start sharing my screen and give you an overview of the document. Okay. Let's see. Hold on just a second. All right. So the 5-year capital improvement program. So this is the improvement program and not the plan. The plan is the 20-year plan. And this is a document that we update every 2 years. So it's a document that we have had in the past, and we have direction within our comprehensive plan to actually update and maintain this document. So what is in the 5-year CIP? So the 5-year CIP includes the list of projects that we have funding for to complete over the next 5 years. That's a really straightforward explanation of what it is. It is the large dollar project. So for the most part, it's projects, transportation projects that are greater than $50,000. And it also reflects past board decisions. So it doesn't bring forward any new projects that you haven't seen in the past. It reflects past funding decisions. Included in this document, and it's a part of Table A within the document, it includes all the lists, all the different projects. It talks about when those projects are generally scheduled to occur by fiscal year. It also talks about the different types of funding sources associated with each of those projects. So how does actually a project get within the 5-year CIP? And like I said, these are sort of past direction that we've received from the board. So the different projects may come from a variety of different planning projects, be it the Intelligent Transportation Systems Plan, the ADA plan, transition plan that really talks about sidewalks and curb ramps, bridge and culvert review, all different types of different plans, including the 20-year capital improvement plan, as well as the safety action plan. So as an example of the types of projects, these are just a handful of projects that have been completed over the past 5 years, is the AGA project along Oak Grove Boulevard, the pedestrian project on Portland Avenue. It includes bridge projects, so the replacement of the Salmon River Bridge, and all different types of safety and projects. So those are the types of projects that we've completed over the past 5 years. And then what this includes is the projects that we will build over the next 5 years. And so how it's shaped, and if you have an opportunity to look at the full list, we put the different projects in different categories. So you can see it includes upgrades. An upgrade is a project that actually addresses many different parts of the roadway. It may include a turn lane and a bike lane. It may include a sidewalk. We also have bridge projects, safety projects, active transportation projects, and repair projects. So there's the whole suite of different type of projects, and within the 5-year CIP and the project list, they're summarized and grouped by these categories. Here is a map. So a map of all the projects are included within the 5-year CIP. Of course, this is probably a little challenging to read right now, but it gives you just a high level view of the different work that we anticipate will be happening over the next 5 years. So one of the things that's really different in this 5-year CIP than in the last 5-year CIP is that we have folded in all of the different projects that are anticipated to be funded by the Community Road Fund over the next 5 years. So it's not every single one of those projects, but really those that are programmed over the next 5 years. And what that really does is it increases the amount of money that we will be investing in our transportation system. And so again, here, I'm not going to read all of these projects, but these are examples of the projects that are being constructed specifically with Community Road Fund dollars out in the community. And as a part of the project list within the 5-year CIP, we also have indicated which of those projects, they have their own separate categories. So folks know which projects are funded by the Community Road Fund versus other things. Here's a real snapshot just to give you guys an idea of how our investments in the transportation system have changed across time. And so on the far left, I believe that is. So that's the amount of investment in our transportation system that have been completed since 2016. So about $71 million have been invested in our transportation system in projects over the past 5 years. When we look at what we would anticipate on our last 5-year CIP, so that's the middle column, we were looking at a total investment of $54 million that we would be doing over the 5-year period. So you can see the impact of the Community Road Fund. There is about $122 million, over $122 million worth of investment within our transportation system that's programmed within the next 5 years. Another thing that we have done with this 5-year CIP is we wanted to understand how our investments were impacting different communities, and especially those that perhaps have not had investments in the past, and specific groups that have been historically or underserved or more marginalized. So we have done an assessment of how much investment is made in different areas where there is above average concentrations of these type of populations, these different demographics. So for example, for this chart, we can see that these are the 7 different demographic categories that we have assessed, that being areas where there are higher concentrations of people over 65 living, higher concentrations of people who are Hispanic, greater concentrations of people with English proficiency, limited English proficiency. So as you can see, and then you can also see how much investment is occurring within those areas with higher concentrations of these different categories. We also did an assessment where we looked at kind of grouping, we call it our Transportation Equity Index, where we look at a composite score and understanding where in composite, kind of looking at all of these together where there are, how our investments have impacted those areas. So this particular map, again, this is a map that's included within the 5-year CIP document, gives you a very high level assessment and overview of where our 5-year CIP projects are in relationship. And it's really the blue categories that are light blue is well above average concentration of different demographic and our equity index areas, as well as the well above average in the dark blue. So with that, again, very high level overview of the document. We're here to answer questions as well as get direction from you. So within your materials were 2 options and our recommendation is option number 1, which is to place the fiscal year 21-25 5-year CIP onto a business meeting consent agenda for approval.
Okay, Karen, just a couple of things I want to add real quick. One, board, we're going to be doing a major update to our 20-year transportation system plan, I think beginning next calendar year. That's something we do about every 10 years. And so that plan is what feeds the capital improvement programs of the future. The other thing I wanted to add is there's other things we're doing with our money, obviously. And a lot of that does involve some road projects and maintenance and operations. We actually have a 5-year maintenance plan as well. It's a separate plan than the capital improvement program. So if there's certain road paving activities you don't see there, it's because it's not within the scope of the capital improvement program, but we're still doing it. So happy to take questions.
Great. This is a very good presentation. I love the maps. It makes sense to me when I look at the maps. I noticed going up this area. Oh, what happened to the, hang on a minute. I want to say the Lake Road. Oh, here we go. Lake Road, Minuteman intersects with Johnson Creek. Is that corners where there's 3 roads coming together that's really difficult? That's just on the other side of Milwaukee.
Are you talking about Railroad Avenue?
Yes.
Linwood?
Yes, all that.
Yeah, that intersect with Harmony. I don't think we have a major capital project plan there. Is that within the city of Milwaukee, Karen?
So it's an area that's right at the edge of Milwaukee and Clackamas County. We have portions. It's my understanding that we have portions of control over the intersection, but Milwaukee also has some control. So we kind of go back and forth. We typically are talking about that intersection a lot. But I do want to be clear: there is not a project. There is not currently a project on our 5-year CIP at that intersection.
Well, I'm looking at the map and something is highlighted in dark blue, and maybe I'm misunderstanding what the blue highlights mean.
Yes, so the dark blue highlights, and I can, you want me to share my screen so we're all looking at the same map?
Please do.
Okay. Okay, here we go.
Project CRC 11.
So I think this is right here. Do you see my
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Right? Okay. So this blue area is an intelligent transportation systems project, an ITS project that is working with different signals in the area. It does go up Lake Road, but it does not go into that particular intersection from my understanding.
Okay, that's fine. And I'm not going to waste any more time on one project. I mean, I think, this is very good. Commissioners, any comments on this? Any questions for the presenters? I think you've done a lot of hard work on this. Commissioner Fisher.
I'm always amazed when you come before us and it's all this incredible work and it's so organized, and I just have to applaud that. One question that I have that I'm sure is on other commissioners' minds is, so we have this I-205 situation, we have potential tolling of all lanes, we have projects within here that are dealing with current congestion, which could be affected by diversion. Is any of that uncertainty, we have a lot of uncertainty. How are we accounting for that? How's that taken into consideration?
Well, it's on my mind 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm exaggerating. It's sitting out there with almost everything we do, and we're keeping it in mind. I mean, we don't have specific projects because it's way premature. But we're all thinking about it. And certainly, I think with our transportation system plan update that's coming up, it's going to play a pretty big role in that. So I guess my best answer is stay tuned, other than the fact that it's on our mind with everything we're doing.
And then just one project that's up high on the list with our vehicle registration fee dollars. Can't quite think of what the name of that is called. Is the on Stafford dealing with congestion? I know that's going to be a key area. Are we adapting anything or looking at more diversion there? I mean, it's already super jam-packed, and it's really dangerous there on that road.
So the project design is not going to be impacted by that. That'll involve a whole corridor, a look at the entire corridor and what we could do, and working with ODOT in that in the future, just depending on what tolling they do, if there's tolling, what it looks like, what the numbers show, which we don't have any of that information right now. The improvement we're planning there right now is a roundabout, and which will have some flexibility built into it, but that is the current project, and that's what we're proceeding with.
So I did want to add one additional thing about how the 5-year CIP functions. This is something that we update every 2 years to reflect changes, additional projects that have been identified for funding, if we get grant resources, or if we had other resources coming in to build projects. That's why it's actually done on a relatively frequent cycle. So I would see as new projects become priorities, and they're priorities for the board, and they have funding matched to them. That's the other piece. This is all about projects that have funding matched to them, it then is updated again.
Good point, Karen. Commissioner
And then
Fisher?
my last question, I'm wondering about where the Oglow Bridge is. I know that I don't see it here, but where is that in our process if the will of the jurisdictions that are now with new elected leadership want to bring that back?
Well, it's not active right now. We still have a project in our transportation system plan, the 20-year plan, to look at a crossing somewhere. I think it says between the Selwood Bridge and Oregon City. And we know ODOT's doing a little bit of work as part of their 205 work, looking at possible ped bike crossings down there. But right now, we're just kind of holding tight and not rushing back into that process. But the project, there's still a project in the TSP.
And I think I would also add is that the 5-year CIP reflects capital projects. That's like we are building something right now versus our planning projects, which are on the planning work program. So that, it's a slightly different way of showing the projects that we're working on.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. And Sonia, Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes. Good morning, Mike and Karen. I want to thank you for an outstanding report. It's very well organized. I appreciate the work in this. The thing that jumps out at me is that in this 5-year capital improvement program, there's not a lot of capacity additions, okay? And I get down in your report to Appendix D, Attachment A, the 20-year capital projects, and then Table 5-3C, long-term capital projects that aren't funded. That basically my concern is this: we're spending 122 million bucks over the next 5 years without any real capacity additions to our roads, while we're going to see a significant increase in population during that time. Now, you said, Mike, that next year you're going to look at the 20-year capital projects update. So when people ask me about this, Mike, about what we're doing here today, and they say, where is the new lanes coming to alleviate congestion on some of our roads? 213, 212, I could go on. What's my answer going to be, Mike?
So a few things about that. Well, first, our 5-year CIP generally doesn't include the state highways that you just talked about. So those are the roads under ODOT jurisdiction, and those are a much larger projects, much bigger deal, and we'd have to work with the state on those. But our current 20-year TSP, while I will say we do have capacity projects, and it's a lot of turn lanes and intersections where we don't have them. It's the roundabout at Stafford Childs. There are capacity projects, but you're right, we don't have a lot of add new complete lane because we don't have that in our plan. Our last update to the plan, when it looked like the need, did not spit out a whole bunch of projects like that. Now we've done some. I mean, we've done, and I'm just looking backwards here, we punched Monterey through near the town center and Boyer as well. So we've added some new roads where there weren't even roads before. We are looking at a big project right now with Happy Valley, 172nd widening, but that's not in our plan, that's in the city's plan. So we're doing that, and we're participating together. The Sunrise work, where we just got the money from the state legislature to do a visioning project, is part of that is a brand new road, again, where there is no road. So we have them. They're just not within the confines of this capital improvement program, the way Karen laid it out. But in all honesty, again, we don't have a lot of projects on county roads in our TSP that say widen this road to 5 lanes instead of 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one last question.
Go ahead.
On the 20-year capital projects update for next year, how much of that is going to be involving state highways?
Karen, do you want to address that?
So during the process, we are required to include what's called a regional, look at the regional transportation system. And so currently we have a regional transportation system list, right? And it has high, medium, and low priorities. So we do look at those state facilities in our 20-year plan, whereas our 5-year plan really focuses on where our money is going and investments to our transportation system, our road system. So bottom line is, yes, we will be looking at those regional facilities.
Thanks, Karen.
And my understanding, one question is that really most of these projects already have matching dollars pretty much funneled to them. And that has always seemed to me through the years of this process, that's been a fundamental piece that helps us to understand which projects could more smoothly move forward. And if I'm wrong, tell me.
No, that's correct. I mean, this program is funded, and that's what distinguishes it from the 20-year plan.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I didn't highlight in my presentation is that only 25%. So I talked about $122 million of investment in this 5-year CIP. Only 20% of that is our road fund. The rest of it is other funding sources, be it SDC fees, the community road fund. It could be outside federal funding, but our road fund is only funding 25% of this overall investment.
Sounds very efficient. Very good. Commissioner Savas, your hand is up.
Yeah, I share Commissioner Scholl's concerns about some of those projects are related to capacity. I think we need to think ahead as far as how and where, specifically where our communities are growing. When this plan was created back when I first saw it, we had a commission who felt that Molalla would never, use, or Sandy, or any of the rural cities would use up its urban growth boundary for housing or anything else. And all that land's pretty well gone, and Molalla has no urban growth area to grow any housing on. So lots of cars commute back and forth from our rural areas more than ever. And we're seeing traffic buildups and congestion on our rural roads on a daily basis during rush hour. That is just, it's just intolerable for a lot of folks at times. So with that said, I also want to just highlight that there's a number of safety issues on those same rural roads that actually bother me more than the capacity ones, frankly. No safe area for people to walk or ride a bike or anything else, and extremely dangerous situations out over there. So like to see a lot more emphasis on projects that are related to that. I know that, frankly, Commissioner Scholl, fellow colleagues on the commission, Mike knows this. I think our staff know this pretty well. We don't even have a reasonable fraction of the money to even fund the projects that are already there. But I think that it'd be nice to have them included, so that whereby if money comes available or there's an issue that comes up, that we've got some kind of a plan or a project identified. Lastly, Commissioner Fisher, I would like to better understand your interest on the Oglo Bridge crossing. I just remind everyone and my new colleagues on the commission where that left off at. And I'd like to know exactly what you mean by jurisdictions. So the bridge as proposed went from, as was studied, went from Lake Oswego to the Oak Grove area. So if that's the jurisdiction you're talking about, we had at the time a lot of resistance on both sides of the river from the citizens of the county, both whether they were Lake Oswego citizens or unincorporated, and no real agreement. The Oak Grove Community Council was stymied because a substantial majority of them were in opposition to that project. So I would personally like to see it back on. But when it talks about jurisdictions, I do know that Lake Oswego did make a change, and maybe they're more receptive to that. But I would certainly like to know what jurisdictions you would like and who represents those jurisdictions, to make sure we got community support for the project, so that our efforts and staff's efforts are not lost. Thank you.
So I just want to respect Chair Smith's our previous conversation about board rules, and it is off topic of what we're dealing with today. I just had a question because I wasn't sure where that would be, where it was. I wanted to make sure I was understanding our different planning mechanisms. And if we want to talk about potential crossings of the river at another time, we should probably bring that up at issues, unless Chair Smith would like us to take this time now.
Well, I think it bears a board discussion during issues. We can take more time if you want to discuss that. Sounds like two commissioners want to, and Gary can put it on the list of issues for discussion item coming forward, if that is okay with everybody.
Chair, can I make a friendly suggestion?
Oh, well, you can suggest everything you want.
Yeah, my friendly suggestion is maybe we should contemplate the challenge we have with issues, in that there's not a period of time that is allotted to know if we can have adequate time to discuss it. Mm-hmm. I think that was a product of yesterday at no one's fault, but it's hard to know how much time is allotted for discussion. I think issues cuts it short, whereas the work session packet for today displays how much time is allowed, and we can allow more time or not. But when we don't have a specified period of time or allotment designated, it's very hard to know that we can actually do the work in a quality way.
Well, this is an interesting comment you break up. Number one, the discussion we're having now is not germane to the topic that on the work session, policy session that we're having to. What we're having today is a point of action and a point of adoption, and the Oglo Bridge is not included in this. This is the board order of business. First, we bring it to a discussion at issues, and Gary will allow the time for that. He is in charge of that. At that point, When there's enough consensus to move forward, if a policy session is warranted, if there's votes to move forward on a policy session, we will allow for more time later on that. So with that in mind, is there any more questions regarding what's presented to us today for a vote? And that is approval of the 5-year capital construction plan. Do we have any more questions on this? Commissioner Scholl.
I just have one question. On this plan, the cities, have they given a thumbs up on it? Do they like it? Because it might not be in the city limits, but it affects them and their people. Do we have a consensus that the cities are in agreement with this plan?
Well, I don't have I don't have a document that would attest to that, but
Yeah.
We work with the cities all the time, and nothing on here is new or it shouldn't be surprising. And some of them, which are related to the Community Road Fund, they've actually endorsed and we've worked together to develop. So
Okay, Mike. Thank you.
I think the cities, any improvement in transportation, they tend to favor that unless there's an encroachment or illegal or something that we missed. And then that's really happened at the staff level, I think. Yeah, Karen, thank you for your thoughtful work on this. Frankly, Karen, whenever you bring a proposal to us like this, I'm going, oh my God, here comes Karen Burek. And I know it's going to be so wholly encompassing and you have all these moving parts. And I've learned to appreciate and embrace what you guys are doing over in transportation. I don't understand it all. I'm not even going to pretend that is not my area of focus, but I want to thank the transportation folks for doing all of this work. Any other further comments from commissioners on this? I will entertain a motion.
well, we need authority to bring to consent.
I move that we place the fiscal year 21-25 5-year transportation capital improvement plan 5-year CIP on the BCC business meeting consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Commissioner Fisher has made a motion that we bring this forward for consent agenda on whenever you folks can get on the next business meeting. Commissioner Schrader has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Shannon, please take the poll.
Commissioner Chavez,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
She said aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you, commissioners, for your comments and participation. Thank you, staff, on this. Gary, that's all for the capital construction project. I believe Commissioner Fisher wanted to discuss a topic. I think we have time to do that now.
Thank you, Chair Smith. I was just wanting an update on this cold snap and how our information getting out to the community about the warming centers and if there's any more detailed information that can be provided.
Yes, I will answer that. It's on the county website, commissioners, www.clackamas.us/relief, RELIEF. There's a list of our active warming centers that are open during the daytime, and there are multiple ones during the daytime all across the county. Right now, we have 3 active overnight centers, warming centers. Malala at the Malala Warming Center, the Father's Heart Street Ministry in Oregon City, and the Zor Lutheran Warming Shelter in Canby. Dates or times, locations, maps are all on the county website. This has been promoted through our social media channels and through media requests, so we're getting the word out as best we can to the community that these sites exist.
And utilization, I mean, I'm just concerned that as this cold snaps happen so fast, I wonder if we're doing any on the ground outreach, or I know when we had the heat wave, AMR was going, Commissioner Schrader was going around with AMR, giving water bottles out to folks. Any other detail about how we're getting the word out and if people are getting it? I mean, it is so cold out there. I'm concerned about people who are unsheltered or possibly without heat in their houses.
I don't have the answer to that, Commissioner, so I will ask staff and we'll email you that.
Any other questions or concerns about the warming shelter? Okay, thank you for that. Good point of clarification. Maybe, excuse me, we can have a report after the fact on utilization. I do think that's important because we're spending a lot of money on this, and are people doing it? Did I not read correctly, Gary, under Daniel's report, that maybe the Estacada shelter was not being used? Was that right?
That is correct. The Estacada Center is not open currently due to low number of folks who are using the center. So the center decided not to open because of that.
Well, yeah, we can do what we can do, but if there's not people, and maybe they're doing something else out there that we don't know about. These small communities, you know, really are pretty active themselves, and we can aid them, but you know, they're pretty independent. Commissioner Savas, your hand is up.
Yeah, I love the discussion about utilization. I think they need to be open in case, you know, saving one life is saving one life. And I think they need to be open. But I have noticed that the utilization, even in the cold, even when there's snow on the ground and there's fair warning, they're not used as much. That includes Portland area as well. They're not used as much as we might all think. But I still think it's important that they're open.
Right. Any other comments? Seeing none, no other further business before this board today, I will adjourn. Thank you all for participating.